Arizona has 15 towns where summer doesn't just feel dangerous. It actually is. These are places where the ground scorches through shoe soles, where nighttime brings zero relief, and where the human body starts losing the battle just by stepping outside. At number 15, we have Yuma. This city sits in Arizona's far southwestern corner near the California and Mexico borders and logs more than 110 days per year above 100 degrees. That's not a heat wave. That's just summer. Yuma's low elevation and almost total absence of cloud cover means heat builds with nothing to stop it. Air temperatures regularly push well past 110 degrees, and heat events climbing into the 120s happen with enough frequency that locals barely flinch. Agriculture is the backbone of Yuma's economy, which means thousands of workers head outside every morning into conditions that health agencies classify as medically dangerous. There's no working from home when the crop needs harvesting at 112 degrees. Yuma is the entry point for this list, because it sets the standard, over 110 days above 100 degrees every single year. That's the floor here, not the ceiling. And it only gets worse as we move up. At number 14, we have Parker. Sitting along the Colorado River in La Paz County, Parker routinely hits 115 degrees during July and August. People assume the river nearby means cooler air. It does not. The water changes nothing overhead. Air temperatures in Parker stay dangerously high all day and well into the night. Nighttime lows during summer hover in the upper 80s to low 90s, which means the body never fully recovers before the next day's heat cycle begins again. The desert surrounding Parker offers no natural shade and no windbreaks of any kind. There is nothing between residents and the full thermal force of open Cimarron Desert for months at a stretch. The landscape absorbs everything and gives it all back. Parker doesn't get the national headlines that larger Arizona cities do, but its numbers tell the real story. Consistent 115-degree summers with no overnight recovery make this one of the most physically demanding places in the country to simply exist. At number 13 is Lake Havasu City. It's a well-known tourist destination built around a large reservoir on the Colorado River, and it draws visitors from across the country. What the tourism brochures don't lead with is the summer temperature. Summer here regularly exceeds 115 degrees. The water surface reflects sunlight, and the rocky terrain surrounding the city absorbs heat and radiates it back outward from every angle. Surrounding desert areas near the city have recorded temperatures reaching 128 degrees. Outdoor recreation drives the local economy. Boating, hiking, and water sports are the whole point of Lake Havasu City. But from roughly June through September, those activities carry genuine medical risk, and emergency services respond to heat incidents on a regular basis. A city built on outdoor appeal, becoming dangerous outdoors for a third of the year, is a real tension locals live with. The economy depends on the water. The water sits under air that can reach 128 degrees. That's the trade-off. At number 12 is Bullhead City. This community sits directly across the Colorado River from Laughlin, Nevada, and consistently ranks among the hottest places in the entire country. Its recorded official temperatures have gone above 120 degrees more than once. The terrain around Bullhead City is what makes its heat particularly savage. Black volcanic rock and canyon walls absorb solar radiation all day and then radiate it back for hours after sunset. The ground itself becomes an additional heat source after dark. Even early mornings in Bullhead City during July can feel suffocating. Temperatures climb past 90 degrees before 8 in the morning, meaning there is no comfortable window to be outside. Not at dawn, not at dusk, not at any point. During extended heat waves, power grids in Bullhead City face serious strain. Air conditioning shifts from a comfort item to a survival requirement. For residents who lose power during a multi-day heat event above 115 degrees, the situation becomes medically critical fast. At number 11 is Quartz Site. This small desert town in western Arizona draws enormous crowds during the cooler winter months for its famous gem and mineral shows. Tens of thousands of people visit between November and March. Then summer arrives and almost everyone leaves. The population of Quartz Site drops dramatically when temperatures climb because summer here is not manageable casually. Readings routinely surpass 115 degrees, and the town's flat, completely open desert setting provides zero natural windbreaks and zero shade of any kind. Quartz Site sits at low elevation surrounded by open Sonoran Desert on every side. There are no hills, no tree lines, no geographic features that interrupt the heat. Hot air settles into the basin and builds throughout the day with nothing to disrupt it. Those who stay through summer in Quartz Site do so by choice or necessity, and they take it seriously. Extreme precautions aren't optional there. They're the difference between getting through the day safely and ending up in a medical situation by afternoon. At number 10, we have Wickenburg. This historic ranching and mining town sits northwest of Phoenix in the lower Sonoran Desert, and its summers are exactly what that geography suggests. Temperatures regularly reach and exceed 110 degrees during July and August every year. Wickenburg's elevation is lower than many communities in northern Arizona, which removes one of the few natural buffers against extreme desert heat. There's no altitude advantage here. The town sits fully exposed to the thermal conditions of the low desert basin. Outdoor work in Wickenburg, during summer, including ranching and landscaping, which are core parts of the local economy, becomes genuinely hazardous. Workers aren't just uncomfortable, they're operating in conditions that carry documented risks of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Wickenburg's identity is rooted in its Western heritage, a past built before reliable air conditioning existed. That history is a point of pride. But modern summers here are a serious public health reality that no amount of historical character changes. At number 9 is Gila Bend. This small town along Interstate 8 in Maricopa County has earned a specific reputation among people who study extreme heat in Arizona. It's not a reputation for scenery or culture. It's a reputation for temperature records. Gila Bend and its surrounding region have documented readings above 120 degrees. The town sits in a flat, low-lying desert basin, with virtually no elevation change in any direction. Hot air pools there and intensifies, because there's nowhere for it to go. The town's small population and limited infrastructure make heat events particularly hard to manage. There are no large cooling centers, no major hospitals nearby, and no geographic relief. When a heat wave hits Gila Bend, residents absorb the full force of it. Travelers on Interstate 8 passing through Gila Bend in summer describe the experience of stopping there as stepping directly into a furnace. That description isn't colorful exaggeration. It's an accurate account of what 120-degree air with no shade actually feels like on arrival. At number 8 is Casa Grande. This mid-sized city sits roughly halfway between Phoenix and Tucson in Pinal County, and summer temperatures here regularly climb past 110 degrees. Extended heat waves push conditions well beyond that baseline for days or weeks at a time. Casa Grande has seen rapid population growth in recent years, which has made its heat situation meaningfully worse through a specific process. Developed land, roads, rooftops, and pavement absorb and retain far more heat than natural desert does. This is the urban heat island effect. The more Casa Grande builds, the hotter its baseline becomes. Growth that looks like prosperity on paper is simultaneously expanding the thermal footprint of the city. More buildings and pavement means higher local temperatures on top of an already extreme regional climate. For residents in Casa Grande without reliable cooling systems, summer isn't an inconvenience. It's a survival challenge. Access to consistent air conditioning in a city hitting 110+ degrees during multi-day heat events is genuinely a matter of staying alive. At number 7 is Eloy. This small agricultural city in Pinal County is known internationally for one unusual reason: its skydiving facilities. Eloy hosts some of the most active drop zones in the world, but its summer climate is among the harshest in Arizona. Eloy sits in the same low desert basin as Casa Grande and records summer temperatures consistently above 110 degrees. Agricultural work in the surrounding fields during those months isn't just uncomfortable. Heat exhaustion risk is documented and real for anyone working outdoors for extended hours. Eloy has a significant farm worker population, and those workers face disproportionate heat exposure by the nature of the job itself. You cannot harvest crops remotely. The work requires being outside in direct sun during the hottest part of the day in 110-degree conditions. Heat-related illness in Eloy is a documented public health concern every single summer. Access to adequate shade and hydration during working hours is not guaranteed for everyone. For the farm worker community specifically, summer in Eloy carries risks that don't apply equally across the population. At number 6 is Wellton. This small town in Yuma County sits along Interstate 8, surrounded by irrigated farmland and open desert. It experiences the same extreme heat pattern as nearby Yuma, with temperatures regularly exceeding 110 to 115 degrees throughout the summer months. The agricultural economy in Welltoon requires significant outdoor labor even during the hottest parts of the year. There is no seasonal pause in farming operations because the heat hits dangerous levels. Workers are outside when the thermometer reads 115 degrees because the work doesn't stop. Welltoon has very limited public infrastructure for heat response. Cooling centers and emergency heat services that larger cities maintain simply don't exist at the same scale here. When a dangerous heat event arrives, residents and workers rely almost entirely on whatever private cooling they can access. That gap between what the heat demands and what the town can provide institutionally is what makes Welltoon stand out. It's not the highest temperatures on this list, but it's a place where the mismatch between climate severity and available support is particularly stark. At number 5 is Somerton. This city in Yuma County sits near the US-Mexico border and shares the full thermal intensity of the broader Yuma region. Summer temperatures here regularly surpass 110 degrees, and the city's layout makes those temperatures harder to escape. Somerton has a dense urban layout and a high population density relative to its size. That combination amplifies the urban heat island effect at the neighborhood level, meaning the streets and buildings in Somerton retain heat that makes local temperatures measurably higher than open desert nearby. A large portion of Somerton's residents work in agriculture or industry, with significant outdoor exposure during the hottest months. The economics of the area mean many people have no option to stay inside during peak heat hours. The job is outside, so they are outside. The city's proximity to the border means some residents have limited access to consistent air conditioning, which increases vulnerability during prolonged heat events. When temperatures stay above 110 degrees for multiple consecutive days, that access gap stops being an inconvenience and starts being a medical emergency risk. At number 4 is San Luis. This is Arizona's southernmost city, sitting directly on the US-Mexico border in Yuma County. Summer temperatures here regularly exceed 115 degrees, and overnight relief is minimal. The heat doesn't really end between June and September, it just briefly lowers. San Luis has a dense population relative to its physical size, and a high proportion of residents engaged in physically demanding outdoor work. The combination of extreme heat, physical labor, and dense urban conditions creates a compounding set of risk factors that operate simultaneously every summer. San Luis is also a major port of entry. Thousands of people cross through the area on foot every single day. Those crossings happen in air temperatures that health agencies classify as dangerous. Heat exposure at the border crossing is a documented humanitarian concern each summer. The border crossing aspect of San Luis is what separates it from most other entries on this list. It's not just residents managing a harsh local climate. It's thousands of people in transit, on foot, in 115-degree heat, without access to cooling along the route. At number 3 is Tacna. This is an unincorporated community in Yuma County along Interstate 8, small in population but extreme in its climate. Like other communities in the Yuma region, Tacna sits at low elevation in open desert where temperatures routinely exceed 110 to 115 degrees. What makes Tacna particularly notable isn't that its temperatures are the highest on the list. It's that the community has almost no infrastructure to deal with those temperatures. No major cooling resources, no commercial centers, no institutional heat response of any meaningful kind. With a sparse population and geographic isolation, residents of Tacna face heat exposure, with very few safety nets of any kind. There's no cooling center down the street. There's no large hospital nearby. There's open desert and summer heat and the resources each household can privately maintain. Tacna represents something larger than itself on this list. It's a stand-in for the dozens of small, rural, unincorporated desert communities across western Arizona, where extreme heat meets minimal infrastructure and the people living there manage it largely on their own terms. At number 2 is Ehrenberg. This small, unincorporated community sits on the Arizona-California border along the Colorado River, directly across from Blythe, California. It occupies one of the lowest elevations in the entire state of Arizona, and that geography matters enormously for temperature. Summer temperatures in Ehrenberg regularly approach and occasionally exceed 120 degrees in the surrounding desert. Extended periods above 115 degrees are not considered unusual or exceptional here. They are a normal, expected, annual feature of summer in this community. That's just what summer is. Ehrenberg has minimal services, a small permanent population, and very limited public infrastructure of any kind. There's no large employer, no hospital, no city government managing heat response programs. What exists here is a small community in an extraordinarily extreme climate with very little institutional support. Despite its small size and general obscurity, Ehrenberg's climate data places it among the most thermally extreme inhabited locations in the entire state of Arizona. Most people driving past on Interstate 10 have never heard of it. The heat there doesn't require recognition to operate. But number one is where everything changes. The Painted Rock Desert in western Arizona, near the confluence of the Gila and Haza-Yampu rivers in Maricopa County, represents Arizona's most extreme heat zone, and one of the hottest land areas in North America outside of Death Valley. This region has recorded ground surface temperatures exceeding 170 degrees, and air temperatures above 120 degrees during peak summer conditions. Those numbers sit outside the range of what most people in the country ever experience or even imagine as a possibility for a real place. No permanent community exists in the Painted Rock area. That absence is the point. The heat has made sustained human habitation here essentially impossible without continuous, uninterrupted artificial cooling. The land itself has rejected permanent settlement through temperature alone. This is the location that heat researchers use as a benchmark. When scientists and climate analysts want to understand the outer boundary of what Arizona's desert can produce thermally, the Painted Rock region is the reference point. It's the ceiling for everything else on this list. Standing in the Painted Rock Desert during peak summer isn't a hike or an adventure. It's a medical situation waiting to happen within minutes. The ground underneath burns through footwear. The air above it measures above 120 degrees. There's no shade, there's no water, there's nothing. What makes this number one entry different from every other location on this list is that it isn't a community struggling to cope with extreme heat. It's a place that never became a community precisely because the heat made that outcome impossible. Every other town on this list has people in it. People with jobs, with families, with lives built around managing conditions that would end most people's tolerance within a day. Painted Rock has heat and desert and nothing else. That's what number one looks like. Looking back across all 15 locations on this list, a pattern becomes clear. These aren't random dots on a map. They cluster in western and southwestern Arizona, in the low desert basins, along the Colorado River corridor, in the Yuma region. Geography is driving this. Low elevation removes the thermal buffer that higher ground provides. Open desert removes shade and wind disruption. Proximity to reflective rock and water surfaces adds amplification. These communities aren't just hot because Arizona is hot. They're hot because of exactly where they were built. The people living in these places didn't choose them for the summers. They chose them for work, for family, for opportunity, for history. Yuma exists because of agriculture. Bullhead City exists because of proximity to Nevada's entertainment economy. San Luis exists because of the border crossing. But the climate those communities now face is intensifying. Summer temperatures across the American Southwest have been trending upward for decades. The towns on this list that were already extreme are getting more extreme. The baseline is shifting, and it's shifting in one direction only. The public health challenge embedded in every location on this list is the gap between what the heat demands and what communities can provide. Cooling centers, emergency services, reliable power grids, accessible air conditioning. Not every town on this list has those things in proportion to the risk. For farm workers, border crossers, elderly residents, and low-income households across these 15 locations, summer isn't a season to endure with some discomfort. It's a multi-month period where access to cooling is the difference between being okay and ending up in a hospital. Arizona's extreme heat towns aren't cautionary tales about living in the wrong place. They're a direct look at what it costs to build a life in one of the most thermally demanding environments on Earth, and what happens when the temperature keeps rising and the support doesn't keep up.